Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. This is my recap for the anime Konyaku. If you like my recaps, please consider subscribing. The story begins as a girl runs through a forest and trips like every person in every scary movie ever. She is being chased by a group of soldiers, but they stop for a moment out of fear. One of the soldiers explains that deep in this forest is the lair of the Demon Lord. Rumor says he hates humans, and anyone who approaches his lair is subject to his violence. Just then, they are informed of the girl's location and the chase continues. As she runs, the girl apologizes to someone named Natalia for taking off without explanation. She begins to promise her something, but the clumsy chick falls for the second time in the past minute. She sees a house in the distance just as she passes out. The next morning, a boy reads a headline saying that a wicked woman from a neighboring nation has gone missing. He senses a presence and heads into the forest to find a group of suspicious-looking animals who look like they are up to no good and wonders if there's a monster there. He finds that it's actually a girl and assumes that she must have fled from an abductor. The soldiers hide nearby, but we find that the boy was already well aware, and he uses elementary illusion magic to mess with them. He can tell from a badge that they are guards from the Nurez kingdom, and they work directly for the royal family. The boy demands to know what business they have there, but they just act like a broken record and demand that he hand over the woman. They surround the boy and explain that the girl is a major criminal who disgraced the nation. These fools clearly don't know that they are talking to the protagonist, as they promise to not hurt him as long as he hands the girl over with no fuss. The boy isn't afraid at all and declines to comply with the requests. He refuses to side with the group of tin cans, so they point out how he can't use his hands and they attack. Unfortunately for them, he is still able to use magic and shocks them with a non-verbal skill. He prepares his next attack and the soldiers tremble in fear as they realize that this boy is the great demon lord that resides in the forest. This realization comes far too late as the demon lord releases a powerful attack that defeats the entire group. He does some crazy powerful mind control thing and has the soldiers tell him what they will say when asked about what happened. They will say that they searched the forest thoroughly, but the woman's trail was gone, so they concluded that she was attacked by a monster. He then sends his new metallic puppets away as they will have no memory of what actually happened. Later, we learn that the demon lord's name is Alan, and he watches the girl, unwilling to believe that she's a major criminal the whole country is looking for. She wakes up and we learn that her name is Charlotte. The gossip section of the newspaper states that she is the fiancée to the Nurez Kingdom's prince, but she says that's a lie. Charlotte frantically denies it, but Alan tells her to stop freaking out since he can tell if someone is lying just by looking into their eyes. The human lie detector can tell she isn't lying and she breaks down in tears as he is the first person to believe her. She explains that she was at a party when she was called forward and she could hear people gossip about how she is the child of a mistress. It was announced that her evil deeds had come to light, but she tells Alan that she had nothing to do with any of the accusations. Unfortunately for her, no one questioned the words of Prince Cecil, and he announced that she would be arrested for treason. She tried to defend herself, but Prince Pain in the Butt just called their engagement off and had her taken off to prison. Alan, with his lie detector vision, can clearly tell that she was framed. Either the prince didn't want to marry her, or perhaps there was another woman. Charlotte apologizes for taking up his time as she prepares to leave, but Alan changes the subject to point out how messy the room is and asks if she knows how to clean. She says she's pretty average at cleaning, but Alan says that's just what he's looking for and gives her a job. The position is for a live-in maid and she will be in charge of chores. She is quick to remind him that she is a wanted criminal, so he takes a moment to think. He lives secluded deep in the forest, so he doesn't have to deal with other people, so harboring a fugitive defeats that purpose. However, Alan explains that he was betrayed by someone in the past just like she was. 3 years ago, he was invited to join a certain party. Hoping for an adventure, he joined them. However, they used him to break the seal of a temple to steal the treasure they were looking for, and deserted him in front of a horde of monsters. Charlotte thinks that's awful, and Alan can't believe how pure she is since she believed his story without hesitation. Back then, there was no one to help him, so he thinks that they have a lot in common. However, Charlotte, stubborn as a mule, doesn't want to cause him trouble, and declines his offer. Alan decides that he has no other choice, and shockingly puts a death curse on himself. The maniac's heart will stop in 3 minutes, and he won't lift the curse until she agrees to work for him. Alan warns that she better make up her mind, otherwise an innocent civilian will die because of her. She panics at the absurd situation as he is talking like a villain when she thought he was just a nice person that was trying to save her. He proclaims that he is a virtuous man, but then reminds her that she has only 2 minutes and 31 seconds to decide. As if she didn't have enough pressure already, Alan, who's beginning to sound like Kermit on steroids, explains that it's getting harder to breathe. Moments later, we see that she gave in and has now become Alan's maid. Alan marvels at how good a job she has done cleaning and thinks about how rough her hands were when they first met. He determined that she was a noble lady by title only, and in reality she was perhaps more like a servant. Cinderella 2.0 points out that all she did was polish the floor and he was the one that tidied stuff away using magic. Alan, ever the innovator, says that he just used his style of cleaning, which was burning the stuff like a pyromaniac, and it makes her wonder if she's really necessary. He points out how dirty the room was before and explains that he has zero housekeeping skills. Left alone, he doesn't even think of cleaning and uses the same strategy I use, which is to just ignore it till it moves on its own. Charlotte then strangely anticipates her next chore, but he has nothing for her and simply tells her to do whatever she likes until dinner. She can't believe that he isn't worried about her stealing stuff, but he explains that he went shopping earlier and there isn't much cash left for her to steal. She apologizes for him having to buy stuff for her, but he states that he considers it an investment. He leaves her to do what she wants as he needs to work, and he tells her not to disturb him. Alan then thinks about how he can't ignore someone in trouble, but relatably, he also hates being social. Besides that, while she may feel a debt of gratitude to him now, in time she'll be fed up with him and leave. Brushing off his demon lord duties, whatever those are, Alan partakes in one of his few hobbies. This fiendish fact-checking weirdo likes to find holes in research papers on magical theory, pointing out every flaw and riddling it with his corrections. He finishes after several hours and is shocked to find Charlotte behind him. The discount damsel reminds him that he told her to do whatever she liked, and she strangely chose to count the grains in the wood floor. Alan will later find that she doesn't have any hobbies, and in the past when she wasn't doing bridal training, she was just cleaning and mending clothes, so she didn't have any free time for hobbies. Alan can't believe she could say such a sad thing with a smile on her face, and she continues her sob story by stating that she didn't really like her bridal training since she just got yelled at the entire time. After he asks to hear a recent fond memory, Charlotte depressingly tells him about that one time her little sister Natalie brought her some fruit. It was a little bruised, but she didn't get to eat such treats very often, so she was very happy. Her depressing story has her wondering why Alan's face looks so scary, but he tells her that it's the face he was born with. Alan thinks about how even he got to enjoy fun times at a magical academy every day, like making professors tear up by bombarding them with questions and blowing up classrooms with potion experiments. He thinks Charlotte should be having the best time of her life, and yet she has no hobbies or fun memories. Alan then excitedly decides that he's going to give her a crash course on all mischievous things in this world. Moments later, Bargain Basement Cinderella sits in front of several boxes and learns that Alan decided to sell his magical equipment to afford it all. Alan clarifies what he meant by mischievous and explains that it's an immoral type of fun. He can't help but be addicted to this type of mischievous behavior, but points out that Charlotte is an honest and genuine person. He wonders if she has ever spoken up against the Duke's family, and finds that she could never do it since they were kind enough to let her stay with them. It's clear to Alan that she is speaking like they're her master, not her family. He proclaims that he will now begin his lesson that will turn her into a beast that loses her old self. Charlotte, demonstrating her unwavering purity, becomes frightened as she always learned not to do bad things, but he assures her that they won't do anything illegal. Her fear instantly turns to shock when Alan reveals that the first indulgence will be cakes. It's too soon for her to be surprised though, as he reveals even more food. He tells her to eat, drink, and be merry to her heart's content, as this is the day's mischievous thing she will learn. Of course, the Debbie Downer thinks that it's not a good idea since they have to eat a proper dinner. If they only eat sweets, it'll lead to an unbalanced diet. Alan expected this response from Discount Cinderella, but points out that this is exactly why he wants to corrupt her. He is certain that the Duke must have treated her as family on the surface, but in reality handled her like a servant. Alan presents her with a cake, which she of course refuses, since some terribly misguided person incorrectly told her that you can't have cake for dinner. Alan reminds her that he is her employer and orders her to have her fill of all the cakes. Little Miss Never Dessert thinks it's crazy, but he tells her that this is her job for the day. If she doesn't do it, he threatens to use the death curse on himself again. Charlotte wants him to choose what he would like first, but after all that, he hilariously explains that he doesn't like sweets. Charlotte can't believe he sold his things to buy all of it, and is even more amazed when he states that he did it because he thought it would make her happy. He thinks she must hate sweets when she becomes flustered, but she actually loves them and takes her first bite. It's absolutely delicious, and tears stream down her face again. Alan, our demon lord of dessert, is as clueless as ever and wonders if the cake is rotten. But Charlotte explains that she is crying because no one has ever done something like that for her before. As she remembers her past, she says that she isn't sure someone like her is even allowed to be as happy as she is. Alan tells her to stop being ridiculous since this is only the beginning, and he plans to teach her every joy in the world. He has made the decision to stuff her full of delicious food, introduce her to every delight under the sun, and take her to many places around the world. He wants to make her experience fun and happy things until she's bored of them, and until she can say she's the happiest person in the world. Charlotte can't believe that he's doing all this for a total stranger, and he points out that even he doesn't know why he's doing it. But if he is going to do it, then he will do so thoroughly. She explains that she has no way to repay him, but he tells her that there's no need for that, and for her to just think that she's being forced to go along with his hobby. Charlotte wants him to eat some, so he reminds her that he hates sweets, but soon gives in to her plea. He finds that it isn't so bad, and the two enjoy their diabetes-inducing dinner. Alan reminds himself how he doesn't like to be social, but decides to give it a try just this once. They have a good time, but out sea we see that danger looms.
Later, Alan thinks about Charlotte, who's probably trying to avoid type 2 diabetes, said she'll finish the cakes little by little since he preserved them with magic. Our maniacal demon lord thinks that simply eating loads of food is too boring, and he wants to give her more experiences she has never experienced before. He thinks that he knows exactly what to do and lets out a maniacal laugh. The next morning, Alan wakes up after a night of writing his mischievous list. It's the clever scheme his genius brain has created. He is certain that Charlotte will love his list, but a second look makes him realize that the list is filled with things only he would like. Alan determines that he must come up with more ideas and tosses the useless book. Alan finds Charlotte outside his door like a lost puppy, and she is concerned because he looks so tired. Alan, not wanting to look like a simp after staying up all night making her a list, says he was working, and that she should have breakfast without him. Charlotte, seemingly unable to let go of her Cinderella ways, has decided to sweep up around the house. Alan points out that she already cleaned the assigned areas as his maid, but Charlotte explains that she's in his debt and wants to be more useful. This is just a life she is used to, and Alan realizes that she must have been cleaning every single day when she was at the Duke's mansion. Her family is nobility, so they must have had countless servants. If they still made her clean, then the reason must be rather unpleasant. As if that weren't bad enough, she was treated as less than a servant, not to mention exiled from the country for a crime she didn't commit. Charlotte, not wanting to just stand there while our protagonist thinks to himself, leaves. Alan doesn't even really seem to notice and thinks about how Charlotte never speaks ill of others. Not a word of resentment about her horrible family or the jerk ex-fiancé of a prince who framed her. Alan, showing more empathy than you would expect from a demon lord, gets upset and explains that if it was him, he would completely and thoroughly crush all of them to pieces. He determines that it's not that she doesn't resent those people, it's just that she hesitates to express it. What lies deep down is probably her fear towards them and her low self-esteem. Just then, Alan is shocked to hear someone's voice as he fears that they will discover who Charlotte is. He finds that it's a rude cat-human thing named Miyaka, who delivers Alan's mail. The furry calls Alan the Demon Lord, which shocks Charlotte, so he reveals that it's just his nickname. Miyaka realizes that Charlotte looks very familiar, and has maybe even seen her in the most recent newspaper. Alan prepares to lie his face off to hide Charlotte's identity, but Miyaka stops him. She explains that her company's motto is that the customer's needs always come first, so it's none of her business who his maid is. Alan then gives the furball the potions he delivers to the magic store in town. Miyaka explains that his potion is in high demand because it's excellent, but wonders why Alan doesn't live in town since it would be easier for him to make money that way. His answer is simple, and the same one I would give, and that's because there are people there. Miss Always Lands on her feet thinks that Alan should live a little, but he tells her that's none of her business. The cat retorts by saying that his evil-looking face is why the people in town call him Demon Lord. Alan can't deny that, as it's only natural people talk that way about an evil-looking sorcerer living on the outskirts of the city. As an example, we see a few snot-nosed little kids walking through the forest discussing myths about the Demon Lord that resides there. They heard that he casts spells on anyone who approaches his house, but the naive little brats aren't afraid, and proudly proclaim that they will defeat the Demon Lord. Alan shows up to be a nice guy and warn them about the dangers of the forest, but they are instantly terrified. It turns out that Demon Lord really is just a nickname, and Alan is just a simple sorcerer. Miyaka bluntly states that it's time for him to find a purpose for living, but he reminds her that his life isn't a public library by telling her once again to mind her own business. Alan then has Charlotte look through a catalog for any daily necessities she might need. She's incredibly grateful and promises to pay him back, but our valiant protagonist explains that there is no need. Charlotte hesitates again since he already bought her enough cake to feed a small country, but he tells her to just order whatever she wants. And if she hesitates just one more time, he threatens to buy every single item in the catalog. Miyaka sees how rough poor Charlotte has it and explains that she has to tell off the Demon Lord if she wants to stop his tyranny. If it was her, she would give him a taste of her cat punches, especially since it's the best way to forget bad things and release stress. As the Demon Lord takes several punches to the face from the feline, a maniacal look comes over his face. He has come up with a diabolical idea and the girls tremble with fear. Days later, Miyaka returns with the things Charlotte ordered. Surprisingly, Alan ordered something as well. It came in a huge box and he is satisfied with its quality. He explains that it's actually for Charlotte, but she can't imagine what he has gotten her. Alan is sure that she will love it and makes the big reveal. It's a punching bag. Charlotte's completely confused at first, but soon determines that it must be for physical exercise. That isn't quite right, as Alan reveals that it's the mischievous thing she will be learning next. The nosy cat girl, who can't seem to mind her own business, can't believe he is teaching Charlotte mischievous things. She points out how innocent and sweet Discount Cinderella is, but Alan points out that he won't do anything dangerous. Alan demands that Charlotte release all her stress on the punching bag, and has even went through the trouble of attaching her former fiancé to it. Alan explains that what she needs isn't to accept everything, it's to be angry. Sometimes being patient is necessary, but it's just as necessary to let herself go. Otherwise, she will eventually fall apart. The emotions she ignores won't disappear. They lurk in the bottom of her heart and will eventually overflow to destroy her. Alan acknowledges that anyone would hesitate if they were told to hit something, but assures her that soon enough, it becomes addictive. Unfortunately, Charlotte says she isn't angry. Alan explains that in order to find that photo, he looked through many newspapers. He learned how she was treated as a villain in Nura's kingdom, and it frustrated him to no end. They took everything from her, they trampled on her dignity, and now she no longer has a place to stay in that country. Charlotte proves that she is the real punching bag, as she naively says that she is sure the prince had a good reason. She feels like she owes them for raising her until now, and feels bad for the prince for having someone like her as a fiancé. She states that she can't resent them, and Alan determines that the root of the problem is rather deep. Of course, this is frustrating since he thought his plan was perfect. The plan was supposed to go like this. First, let Charlotte realize her resentment. Second, storm into the Nura's kingdom and uncover the prince's evil deeds. Third, Charlotte proves her innocence and the bad guys are captured. Fourth, all problems are solved and she lives happily ever after. This won't work though since Charlotte hasn't faced her feelings yet and she's gotten too used to suppressing them. At this rate, even if the prince is condemned, she'll probably blame herself for it. Miyaka, never one to miss an opportunity to stick her nose where it doesn't belong, ironically tells Alan that he might want to ease up a bit on Charlotte's life. The Demon Lord actually kind of agrees, but it's not in his nature to wait and let time heal things. Instead, he does the exact opposite and demands that Charlotte punch him. Everyone's silence makes him think that she didn't hear him, so he tells her again. Charlotte could never do such a thing, but Alan tells her that she has no choice in the matter, and he will make her do it. We then finally get to see a glimpse of his power as he takes control of the boxing glove and forces her to punch him right in the face. After he gets knocked back, she has no clue what happened, so Alan explains that he manipulated her right arm to hit him. Our masochistic Demon Lord might have liked that a bit too much, and he compliments Charlotte on the powerful punch. Charlotte, looking like the second coming of Mike Tyson, becomes frantic when she sees that she made Alan's nose bleed, but he calms her down. Alan, raising his simp level to the max, explains that no matter how much she punches him, steps on him, curses and calls him names, whatever happens, he will never abandon her. This isn't her old household, and here, she's allowed to feel anything and say anything. She is finally free. Those words begin to sink in, but Charlotte can't believe he made her punch him just to tell her that. He explains that she wouldn't have changed her mind if he didn't go that far, but she still can't accept that he would resort to this. He's glad to see that she is actually capable of anger and shows how easy it is to heal an injury like his. Still, Charlotte asks him to never do anything like that again, since her poor heart can't take it. He promises not to, so she finally begins to realize that she has been living her life afraid of a lot of things. However, she vows not to do it anymore. It may not come right away, but she wants to be able to say what she is thinking out loud. Alan is glad to hear all this and promises to be by her side no matter how long it takes. It's widely different from Alan's initial plan, but he's glad that she can now make a fresh start. Alan apologizes to the human furball as they might not have a use for the punching bag she delivered. Miyaka doesn't mind since the customer always comes first, and she is sure he will be using her delivery service much more in the future. She assumes that he will soon be buying a wedding ring and baby stuff, but the clueless pair have no clue that she is super obviously talking about them getting married. It seems to be a happy ending to another eventful day, but we once again see someone in the forest watching them, as she states that she has found him and he can no longer get away from her. Thanks for watching the first couple parts of this recap. Subscribe and ring the notification bell for future parts.